Hi, and welcome to Season 9, Episode 1 of My Words, Our Journey, the podcast. I'm Monty, your host and author. This adventure, a captain's last voyage. Let's start with Chapter 1, entitled Captain Sib. Through the crack in the drape, annoyingly the sun crossed the closed and non-responsive eyes of one Captain Sebastian Greenlaw III, or as he was affectionately called by his crew, Captain Sib. The festivals had started at Fleming's, his favorite steakhouse. Then the younger members of his staff suggested a new club, 3 levels, all featuring live bands, rotating bars, and digital dance floors. He probably knew the name at some point, but it escaped him as he lay with his eyes still shut. When he opened them, there'd be another person in the room? Shouldn't be. His last memory was of her leaving, upset, because he needed a couple hours rest before his last big day. That would have been around 5 o'clock in the morning. He knew his wake-up call would be coming any minute. He was like a dog knowing when it was time for dinner. He had been staying at the Elser Hotel for many years now, and while his routine was not always the same, more than not, he woke in the state he found himself in this very moment. 3 soft taps at the door, then the footsteps were gone. This would happen again in 10 minutes. If he didn't respond then, his phone would ring 1 minute later. He did not like the sound of the phone in the morning. Well, mid-afternoon. So he usually responded on the second pass. Parts of him would miss this. Other parts knew if he was to live his best life moving forward, he must stop the madness and settle down a bit. Tap, tap, tap. "Thank you," he said with regret. The words, their vibration, hurt his head. 3 ibuprofen, a hot shower, and then there would be coffee and a Danish outside his door. He tipped well. The ship would depart at exactly 3 p.m. His staff would be already there making the rounds, checking everything for the umpteenth time. He'd assembled a team that worked well together, took pride in their service scores, and did not want to let other team members down. They had proven they could party just as hard. The going away bash had been everything they had hoped. He was pleased for them. He thought about them as he stepped out of the shower, knowing he may keep in touch with a few of them after his last trip. But he also knew that would not last, and chances were, after a couple months, he wouldn't talk to any of them. Hard reality, but reality it was. The cart was right where it should be. He wheeled it into his room, checked his phone to make sure he wasn't needed. No messages. Good. The trip would take its normal 8 days. The weather forecast looked clear for the most part. Miami to Southampton, with a short stop in Ponta de Lega, or his new home, as he liked to tell anyone that would listen. He'd been planning his retirement for the last couple years. He had purchased a small place on the island of São Miguel, in the autonomous region of the Azores in Portugal. His ship had stopped there nearly every time during his career. Over time, he fell in love with everything about it. So why not retire there? Unfortunately, he had nothing tying him to the States. His ex had made sure their daughter knew exactly how their father had ruined the marriage and her chance at a happy home. He had tried to make amends. He really had. But with every effort, he pushed them further away. Finally, he decided fate wouldn't allow him to make things right. It wasn't in the cards, some would say. He had given up, and with that, he had lost track of them and them of him. He tried to convince himself it was for the better, but he knew that wasn't the case. He was a good man. He just wasn't meant to be a faithful married type. But he knew more than anything else in his life that he could have been a great father. The vibration of his phone let him know his ride would arrive in 10 minutes. In 9, he'd be standing at the curb for his last time, his final trip to the ship he loved. Chapter 2. Is this ship rocking? The day was perfect. The crowd was excited, anxious, a glorious mix of young, old, and everything in between. This was an 8-day transatlantic voyage. There was plenty of luggage, carry-ons, and the like. Security to be top-notch. Each guest expected no less, so there was little to no complaining as the line crept along. It was clear, as anyone approached the crew, they could tell they took their jobs and security very seriously. There was little to no small talk, just mechanically working their way through the process with each guest and their belongings. Then the dogs were positioned in to do their jobs, and then finally, several crew members with wide smiles and deep tans were available to help in any way they could. Mr. and Mrs. Timothy Chambers were pleasant, speaking with everyone when appropriate, smiling, laughing at dirty old men's jokes, but this was a working trip for them, so they honestly wanted to get to the room, unpack, set up a couple computers, test communications with their partners, just make sure everything was operational and ready for the task at hand. The plan had come from the mind of Timothy. He had been watching Tom Hanks in the movie Captain Phillips. The movie had been out for a while, but when he sat down with the clicker one evening, he moved a couple channels, and there it was. Tom had always been one of his favorites. At some point during the movie, his thoughts, like a wave, he would later describe, moved back and forth. Problem, solution. Another problem, harder to resolve. Finally a solution. And when he was done, he thought he had come up with a very good plan to heist a cruise ship, make a lot of money, no one gets hurt, and there would only be a few that ever knew that it actually happened. He had not been 10 minutes into his thoughts when his loving partner said, "I'm in." The rest kind of all fell into place over the next year. A year spent making plans, researching, raising funds, more researching, more planning, a short break when the money dried up, then finally a couple months of fine-tuning what they all agreed may go down as a top 10 heist of all times. Now they were on board. They had walked the decks, stood and watched. It was real. All the planning had not prepared them for that feeling of, we're really doing this. The same could be said for passenger Kit Holly, a newly divorced mother of 3, traveling alone for the first time. Kit blended in like a cardinal in a gathering of crows. She was 38, but could pass for 28. Brunette hair that fell to the center of her back. She spent 2 hours a day at the gym. Most didn't look past that. But she was also a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, could take apart and rebuild anything from a battery-operated kid's toy to the latest and greatest in computers. Kit also had a special talent. She could build trust with someone, male or female, in a matter of no time. A trait that may come in handy during this trip. Just a side note, everyone had picked their own alter ego, complete with ID, passport, and the like. The team had been using their alter egos for some time now. It had become natural. Not one of them had to think about it. Then the horn let the passengers know the ship would be departing in just a few minutes. Captain Sibb watched as his successor worked the main deck. He decided he wasn't needed and made his way down to the bow, where he joined other passengers as they waved to the few left in the boarding area, as well as watched the boat head out to the open water. He did not want to consider this his last time on a cruise ship, but it very well could be, so he was taking in the experience in a weird kind of way. He had noticed Kit the moment he hit the bottom of the stairs. He had a reputation, well earned, for paying special attention to the ladies, but he had a type, and Kit, she did check all the boxes. Captain had a line he liked to use at least once a voyage. His staff had begged him to move on, but he loved the line, so he walked over to Kit, leaned in and said, "Is this ship rocking, or is it just you?" Chapter 3. Stars Shine Brightly, Daycare. The day prior. Stella was parked under the same tree she had parked under several times before. The tree was perfect. It was large, old, and had just the right bend, so the entire sedan was in the shade this time of day. She had been in Rio for 5 days. This was her second trip to the state in the last month. The distance from her driver's window to the drop-off pickup point forced her to use something other than her cell phone to take the video. She waited and watched as little Maddie would be bouncing out the double doors any time now. She was lucky. Her mom seemed to really love her. Stella had not been so lucky. Her childhood memories were of aunts and uncles trying their best, getting frustrated, trying until they just couldn't. Then, another move. At 18, the road and a hope for a better future than she had seen caused her to head west. West towards something better. Anything, really. She had hitched all the way to Arizona before she had trouble with a handsy trucker. She was debating on her next move when she met the woman that would change her life. Stella was eating half a sub and sitting on a park bench when Sally Ham came into her life. You will know her as Tiffany Chambers, wife of Timothy Chambers, so we'll call her Tiffany moving forward. Tiffany sat down on the bench, talked with somebody on a phone about a job for a couple minutes, then tossed the cell into her purse. made a comment to no one in particular. No one wants to earn an honest living anymore. 2 days later, Stella found herself working at the local Chrysler Jeep dealership in Arizona. It turned out Tiffany and her husband both worked there, Tiffany in the accounting department, and her husband worked as a manager doing something in the sales office. Stella started by answering phones, then scanning the day's work orders, and by the time she knew it, she was working in the service department, helping folks with their appointments, upselling services, and checking folks out. It could be stressful, but the pay was pretty good. She was staying basically rent-free in the basement apartment at Timothy and Tiffany's. Things were working out. When her landlords and bosses approached her about their idea, she had originally said no way, but they had convinced her to at least listen before saying no. They took a chance on her not repeating what she heard, but they were confident in their plan, and when they were done, Stella was too. Right on time, little Maddie ran from the daycare towards the vehicles parked by the circular drive. Her mother, Captain Sibb's daughter, was named Claire Benson. She had married well, worked from home, something to do with insurance. Wasn't important, so Stella hadn't paid it much attention. Her husband was an executive at one of the local hospitals. They had a nice house close to the city and a waterfront home a couple hours' drive. If everything went according to plan, the family would never know they were part of a heist, let alone one that was taking place thousands of miles away. Today was a test run. Tomorrow, the real thing. Chapter 4, Command Central. Timothy and Tiffany sat back on the oversized pillows on the bed and looked at the chaos that was now their room. They would require no room service during the trip. The room looked more like a command central for a small trucking company than a romantic getaway, but the pair was okay with that. The romantic getaway would come later. This was, for the most part, a business trip. 4 high-end laptop computers, 2 scanners, and the upgraded Wi-Fi plan the cruise ship had offered, plus cell phones would be their weapons of choice. It would be the following morning when the first piece of the puzzle would be put into place. It was the most important part of the puzzle. It would set the tone for the remainder of the trip. At the same time, Kit was playing it cool with Captain Sibb, who by this point had used all his best lines. Still, he could tell he was not getting through to the beautiful brunette. Finally he said, "Would you like to see where the magic happens?" He could tell by the look on her face she was taking his words wrong. No, I mean the bridge, the hub where we plot, plan, and steer the vessel. Would you like to tour? Kit played her game a little longer, then agreed to stroll to the bridge, if they could stop and get another mojito. Walking with the captain of the ship was like walking with an A-list celebrity. He was shaking hands, taking pictures, eating up every opportunity to show Kit he was not only a big deal, but the only deal for the next several days. She was impressed with how well he took care of himself. She had memorized his bio and understood he liked his liquor almost as much as his women, but he was tall, fit, tan, and had a personality that one was drawn to. Add in the uniform, well. With drinks in hand, she and the captain entered the bridge. The room was more impressive than the model she had been working with. It was important to place the bug where it wouldn't be found. She had practiced the move over and over again until it was muscle memory that helped her to drop her napkin, bend over so she could pick it up, slide the bug from the pouch in her sleeve, and place it under the console, attached with strong 2-sided tape. It was set to activate as soon as placed on a hard surface. You can find anything on the web, especially if you're willing to pay. By the time she stood and straightened her short skirt, the device was capturing every word for the couple in stateroom A2424. Chapter 5, A Trip to the Zoo. The weather the first morning of the cruise was spectacular. Kit had spent a little more time with the Captain Sibb. He had walked her back to her room and kissed her hand before wishing her a good night. She had agreed to meet him for breakfast. Kit would be his handler. The idea being once before wishing her a good night, she had agreed to breakfast. Kit would be his handler. The idea being, once his part of the plan was revealed, Kit would be able to walk him through what was expected and necessary to ensure a safe resolution for everyone. While she waited for his arrival, Timothy and Tiffany had already taken a walk around the ship, drank a strawberry kiwi smoothie, and picked up a couple small items from the gift shop. Just normal folks doing normal things. Now the couple were back in their room, waiting for the live feed from the daycare. Today was a special day for little Maddie and her friends. Fate had blessed the team with the fact they were going to the zoo today. So Stella was going to the zoo too, where she would be able to send video live. This video would stream to the computer as well as to Captain Sib's cell when the time was right. 9:15 a.m. The small camera had been placed in the tree across from the daycare, directly in the path of the walkway where the children would walk to the bus. Another was located on the fence post that separated the property from the neighborhood. It was too small, undetectable from any distance at all, but the picture quality was unbelievable. They had tried a few different brands. Clear pictures were going to be important to the crew. There could be no doubt what they were watching. Both cameras would stream live to the tablet placed in Stella's lap. Split screen in HD quality. When the doors flew open and the excited group made their way, talking and walking and laughing, she watched the screen. She could have been watching a movie. The quality was that good. Before the bus made it to the first turn, she had hit send. She'd be sending more images from the zoo. They would be taken with a Fujifilm X100 VI, 40 MP stills, and 6K video. Small, compact, and the best they had tested. 9:24. Pics of the lovely Maddie exiting the bus, holding hands with another little girl, her best friend, Zaylee. 9:47. Maddie was sitting with her class, waiting patiently to hear one of the zoo's curators tell them everything they wanted to know about lemurs. This picture was taken from behind. Well, because let's be honest, who doesn't love lemurs? Timothy and Tiffany were pleased with Stella's work. She was a professional. The pictures were downloaded, prepared for sending when the time was right, which should be in about 13 minutes. And let's stop there today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed episode 1 of A Captain's Last Voyage. Have a great day.